Every antagonist is a protagonist in their own right. As someone who spends a lot of their time dissecting popular character tropes in order to create YouTube videos, this quote really got me thinking. What makes the perfect antagonist? Why is it that some of my favorite characters in fiction are those that oppose the main hero? Well, after listing out my favorite antagonists in anime, I realized that this quote rings true. The best antagonists aren't just some roadblock that the hero must overcome, but instead are protagonists themselves whose journey brings them face to face with who the author deems is the main character. Imagine this, a character molded by tragic circumstances who has their own goals and dreams and spends their entire journey acquiring power to achieve those goals. Sounds like your average shonen protagonist, right? Now add in some moral ambiguity and the willingness to use whatever method is necessary to achieve those goals, and then you have an antagonist. Today, I'm going to analyze some of the most iconic antagonists in anime and talk about how they are so well written that audiences either find themselves rooting for the supposed bad guy or are filled with rage by the mere mention of their name. So without further ado, let's explore how to write the perfect antagonist. When writing the perfect antagonist, it's crucial to understand their relationship with the protagonist. I think there are many different types of antagonists, but the two most compelling ones would fall into one of two categories: the contrasting antagonist and the mirroring antagonist. A contrasting antagonist is the perfect foil to the protagonist. Everything from their looks and personality to their goals and ideals stand in stark opposition to the hero. I don't think there's a better example of this in fiction than Griffith and Guts from Berserk. Let's start with their looks. Griffith is the perfect pretty boy. Long smooth hair, radiant skin, a lean body, and an angelic smile. While Guts is a little rougher around the edges. He has short jet black hair, scars covering his body, and is built like a walking tank. Griffith is diplomatic, manipulative, and is able to whisper exactly what others want to hear. Guts is raw and unfiltered, speaking his mind with brutal honesty. And then look at their goals and ideologies. Griffith has this grandiose dream of achieving his own country and is willing to sacrifice the whole band of hawks in order to achieve it. While Guts has no great ambition and instead learns the importance of the bonds he's made, valuing his friends as the most important things to him. Even thematically, Griffith is represented as the white hawk enveloped by light, while Guts is represented by a black hound shrouded in darkness. Their differences in literally every facet of life is what creates this undeniable tension that drives the story forward. On the other hand, a mirror antagonist isn't so much the opposite of the protagonist as they are a reflection of them. Think of them as being two sides of the same coin. While they are not completely the same, they may share the same goal or reach the same endpoint narratively. It's just that the methods of getting there are different. A prime example is Meruem and Gon from Hunter x Hunter. At first glance, they couldn't be more different. Meruem, the Chimera Ant King, begins his journey as an inhuman tyrant, while Gon is the human embodiment of youthful determination and innocence. Yet, as the story progresses, you'll notice the parallels in their journeys. The whole Chimera Ant arc is a stunning story of how Gon, a kind-hearted child, slowly loses his humanity, while Meruem, a newly born ant monster thing, slowly gains his humanity. They're both children struggling to find a place in the world. While Gon is suffering extreme pain and loss for the first time, Meruem is just learning what it's like to empathize and love. Though they are both growing in different ways, by the end of the arc, both characters meet a tragic end. Meruem through his literal death, and Gon through the metaphorical death of his innocence, as well as his crippling body. Despite the two never actually interacting, it's this duality that makes the Chimera Ant arc so great. An antagonist is only as compelling as the challenge they pose. They must demand respect from the audience and feel like a genuine threat, otherwise who would care about them? The perfect antagonist has the ability to push the hero to their limits, forcing them to evolve or face defeat. Despite being the most skilled swordsman in the series, and most likely the strongest human around, Guts is nothing but a little bug when faced against Griffith, someone who has literally ascended to godhood. Not once since the eclipse happened have I thought Guts would be able to defeat Griffith in straight combat, even with the addition of the Berserker armor. Griffith just feels like this being beyond human comprehension because he literally is. And the most recent chapters prove what I'm talking about. Watching Griffith easily take Casca away from Guts, and him realizing that his sword, the one sole thing in his life that he's been able to rely on, could not as much put a scratch onto Griffith, was truly heart-wrenching. Seeing the state my boy is in right now literally brings me to tears. Honestly, one of the main reasons I keep reading Berserk is because I want to know how Guts could possibly take down Griffith without it feeling like an asshole. And then as for Askeladd, while he may not wield divine power, his combination of skill, intelligence, and cunning makes him equally as imposing. From the moment he's introduced, Askeladd commands respect as a leader of a ruthless group of Viking warriors. He's by far the strongest and definitely the smartest among all of his men, including the protagonist, Thorfinn. We see multiple times throughout the prologue where Askeladd just completely demolishes Thorfinn, who is an extremely strong fighter in his own right. Through a mix of swordsmanship and a silver tongue, he's able to easily beat Thorfinn even after the latter gained experience fighting the Thorkel. Both characters remind us that a good antagonist must pose a genuine threat in order to be compelling. They leave us wondering how the protagonist could possibly overcome them. So arguably the most important part of making the perfect antagonist is finding the right motivation. The idea of being evil just to be evil is so played out. One of my least favorite antagonists from modern anime has got to be Muzan from Demon Slayer. It's been a while since I read the manga, but I feel like once he gains immortality, his motivations become super shallow. Maybe you can argue his motivation is this burning desire to live, but either way, I would say Muzan is one of the most forgettable antagonists that I've read in recent years. Now on the other hand, characters like Askeladd and Meruem feel like they act with purpose and that they actually have an end goal. When you finish the prologue of Vinland Saga and learn that everything that Askeladd does is for the sake of whales, it recontextualizes the whole story when you go back to rewatch it. Everything he says and does seem to hold more meaning now. In episode 10 of season 1, we learn that this year of plundering has been one of the worst yet for Askeladd's men. They had been invading England for 10 years at this point, and Bjorn begins to question whether they will even have a chance to fight again next year. Then afterwards, we get a scene of Askeladd giving Thorfinn a history lesson about the Romans and how eventually everyone grows old and fades into the twilight. And finally, at the end of the episode, upon hearing of Canut's capture, Askeladd kills the messenger and gives his men this inspiring speech telling them that twilight has not yet come. At first glance, it may just seem like Askeladd is giving an excuse as to why he will eventually lose to Thorfinn, and that him telling his men that their time isn't over yet may just be referring to how they are going to have one last chance to get rich before the war ends. But once you know Askeladd's backstory, this episode has a whole new meaning. As a child, Askeladd was burdened by his mother with this responsibility that he must save whales, as he is the supposed descendant of the great Lucius Artorius Castus. But at this point of the story, he had gone through most of his life without ever having a small glimmer of hope in regards to saving whales. In fact, he became the very thing he hated instead, a Viking leading a group of savage Danes. But in the split second he heard of Canut's capture, the gears in Askeladd's mind began to turn. He realized that in the twilight of his life, this was his one chance to make a significant change. For him to have a possibility of saving whales by rescuing the possible future king of Denmark and controlling him from the shadows. This is just one example of how knowing Askeladd's motivations to save whales radically changes the meaning of a scene and is one of the reasons why I love him as an antagonist. And in regards to Meruem, while he does originally have the goal of just eating humans and ruin the world, we see him evolve into a character who wants to change society and fight against the injustices of the world. After meeting Komugi, he comes to the realization that the strong must protect the weak, and he makes it his mission to create a world that follows that ideology. I loved his speech during his fight against Netero, where he talks about how on one side of the border there could be starving children, while simultaneously on the other side there could be idle drags who do nothing yet have everything they need. Both characters have deeper motivations than just opposing the protagonist. In fact, both of the characters' goals have nothing to do with the main heroes. Like I said in the beginning of the video, they each see themselves as their own protagonist on their own journey who just happened to have met the main cast at a crossroad. Now imagine a character with everything I've told you about so far. Someone who has firm beliefs, is powerful, and is motivated by their dreams. It really does sound like the hero of a story, right? But the major reason why these characters are classified as antagonists is because of the lengths that they'll go to in order to achieve their dreams. Their moral ambiguity and the belief that the ends justify the means is what sets them apart from the good guys in the story. We see Askeladd take part in assassinations, burn villages to the ground, and murder dozens upon dozens of people. Hell, we see him slaughter a whole village of people because he couldn't risk one leak getting out. But he does all of this for the sake of his goal. Now, is he morally right for this? No, definitely not. But that's what makes him an antagonist. In his head, the differences between right and wrong doesn't matter, as long as he can get Canute into power and ensure the safety of Wales. And Meruem, in the very same speech that I mentioned earlier, he admits to Netero that he'll start his mission using force and power. He understands that in his quest to eliminate inequality in this world, there will be those that oppose him. And he's willing to use force because he believes that this is what needs to be done in order to create a just world. And the final thing you need to keep in mind when creating the perfect antagonist is that, like all great characters, they too need their own character arc. Another reason why I hate Muzan is that he's a static, one-dimensional character. The Muzan we meet at the beginning of the story is the same Muzan we see at the end. Your antagonist shouldn't be a character just idly sitting around waiting to be defeated by the protagonist. They're their own character and should have their own arc as well. And there's no better example than Meruem. We literally see his whole life in one single arc from birth to death. Like I said, he starts off as a monster whose sole purpose is to be king. But after playing a few games of Gungi with some snot-nosed girl, Meruem's worldviews radically changed. He witnessed firsthand how someone inferior to him in a million aspects can still be superior to him in one. How someone deemed weak by society can be strong in their own right. This love and admiration he develops for Komugi is what inspires him to change his goals from being an evil tyrant to the world's savior. If I told someone who hasn't seen the series that Togashi did an amazing job of depicting an ignorant child growing up, learning of the world, and coming into maturity, they'd probably think I was talking about Gon, not some ant creature that was only around for one single arc. And that's how you write the perfect antagonist. The key is to make them feel like a protagonist, complete with their own goals, motivations, and moral dilemmas. If your character is an overwhelming fan favorite, or is someone that can make fans feel disgusted with a single look, then you know you have a great antagonist. Let me know down in the comments who your favorite antagonist is and why. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.